All right, my peoples, thank you all for joining me today. Happy New Year to you all. Okay, so let's get into this new development that just occurred a couple of days ago. So Ivory Coast is now the latest of African countries to kick France out of their country. Boy, I tell you, we're going to have a good conversation about this one. Boy, I tell you, I couldn't be more happier to bring you guys this wonderful news, especially this new year, that we're yet finding another African country standing up to its once colonizer, France, who has been a parasite to a lot of African countries. So now Ivory Coast standing up and saying that they are now kicking out French troops in their country starting this January 2025. The announcement came by their own president not too long from when Senegal, right, the young Senegalese president, just on December 31st, 2024, the end of December, announced also that they are also kicking France out of their country. Boy, boy, we got a lot of tough stuff to talk about. Let me read this one for you. So, Ivory Coast has announced that French troop will withdraw from West African nation, further reducing the military influence of the former colonial power in their region. In an end-of-year address, Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara said the move was a reflection of the modernization of the country's armed forces. Separately, Senegal, which last month announced France would also have to close its military base on its territory, confirmed the withdrawal will be complete by the end of 2025. Ivory Coast is home to the biggest remaining contingent of French troops in West Africa. There are some 600 French military personnel. Listen to this one. Listen to this one. There are some 600 French military personnel in the country, with 350 in Senegal. We have decided in a concerted manner to withdraw French forces from the Ivory Coast, President Ouattara said. France, whose colonial rule in West Africa ended in 1960s, has already pulled its soldiers out of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger following military coup in those countries. See the way they wrote this nonsense? No, they didn't pull their troop out because of the military coup. They were driven out of those places. You see, when these people like this write this stuff, right, they make it look like, oh, France was so concerned about the coup in that country, in those countries, which is why they withdrew their military. No, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, as well as Chad, kicked them out of their country, right? Kicked them out of the country. But when you hear this reporting, they'll make it look like France withdrew voluntarily because of all those instabilities in those countries. No, they were kicked out of those countries because they're the ones causing the instabilities in those countries. Now we're seeing the likes of Ivory Coast following suit, and Senegal following suit. Imagine that. I want you to take a listen to the Ivorian president talking about this, and then listen to the young Senegalese president talking about this in the announcement. Take a listen to this.
We've decided on the coordinated and organized withdrawal of French forces from Ivory Coast. Thus, the camp of the 43rd Marine Infantry Battalion in Port-Bouet will be handed over to the armed forces of Ivory Coast starting in January 2025.
I have instructed the Minister for the Armed Forces to propose a new doctrine for cooperation in defense and security, involving the end of all the foreign military presences in Senegal from 2025.
I say kudos to these countries, because imagine for a second that you have a country like France, right, who colonized these regions. Again, these are regions that were once colonized by France. We've seen the same thing happen the last couple of years with Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, and now we're seeing again France losing its grip, right? Its dominance through the military base from its once colonized region. And Ivory Coast is saying, go, you got to go. Now, do you know the devastation that this is going to cause to France? It's already causing when Burkina Faso kicked France out, when Mali and Niger kicked them out, France right now is in an economic shambles. Their economy is collapsing. Emmanuel Macron, that parasite, that horrible human being who follows the suit of many long lines of other horrible French presidents, right? He's in trouble in this country. They want him out of there because the economy is collapsing. You want to guess why the economy is collapsing? You want to guess the moment the economy started collapsing, when they were kicked out of Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso said, no more. You're not going to be coming here and tapping and looting our resources. They kicked them out. The coups that happened in those Sahel regions were a backlash against the puppet presidents, so-called democratically elected puppet presidents that France put in those countries, which has been whom have been siphoning off their resources so France can live wealthy and enjoy. So the moment these Sahel countries said, listen, no, you got to get out of here, right? They have been having economic issues in the country, right? Because they can't survive without Africa. I mean, wasn't it the former president of France, Jacques Chirac, that said that if it weren't for West African countries, right, France will slide into the third world country. He said it, that if it weren't for Africa, France will slide into a third world country. I said, let them fall right into it. I said, let them fall right into the bottom of the Chesapeake Bay, which is where they're going to go. Because France has been the biggest headache for West African countries. This horrible country, France, has been taxing its once colonized regions in Africa. African countries have been paying upwards of $500 billion a year to France. Just think about that amount for a second. France has been taxing its once colonized regions. That means countries they once colonized, when they so-called gave them independence and say, hey, you're free. It's all on paper. But these countries have been paying upwards of $500 billion to France every year. What are they getting for it? It's the cost of freedom, according to these so-called white devil. It's the cost of freedom. And on top of that, they've been putting puppet presidents in those countries. So those puppet presidents can sell minerals, uranium, diamond, coal, and many other minerals to France at pennies on the dollars. Can you imagine that Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali are one of the top 10 countries in Africa that are poor? Let me repeat that one again. Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali are one of the top 10 countries that are the poorest in Africa. But these countries are the richest when it comes to mineral resources. How is it possible that these countries are in dire straits and poor? Because they have the parasite like France. They have a parasite country like France, who not only taxes them every year, the cost of freedom, but also loots their resources and then plants military bases in these countries to increase Islamic insurgency so they can move propaganda to the rest of the world and say, look, at these countries are harboring terrorism. So those countries can be at their beck and call. It's a strategy. It's an economic strategy. If we destroy your reputation, nobody wants to do business with you. So you're going to have to sell your minerals cheap for us because we're the only ones that want to steal the whole thing, according to them. That is how they've been looting from all African countries. So ever since France was kicked out of this whole Sahel region, they've been going around trying to find places to go hide. They've been going around. They went to Ivory Coast, the same Ivory Coast, who is now kicking them out. Kudos to them, by the way. They went and put in their ears in Ivory Coast, try to buddy with Ivory Coast so Ivory Coast can fight Burkina Faso. Ivory Coast, I've reported on this, began doing the dirty deed of French and Western people to fight Burkina Faso's leader, Ibrahim Traoré. Now their eyes have opened. Now their eyes have opened. And they've decided that, you know what, you got to go. You got to get out of here. Senegal too. You remember we saw the Senegalese president, the young president of Senegal, when he first came in, right? We saw him and his prime minister. They were both very strong, energetic, and they pushed back against the influence of France in the country. And then a month later, we saw him shaking hands with the guy. You know, there's a thing they say, when you shake hands with the devil, right, you're going to pay the price for it. Now his eyes is open, and he said, no, you got to get the hell out. Now, France is going to be even worse off because the economy, everything in France, whether it's their airline or Air France, whether it's their countries, whether it's their product, all of that stuff is about to slide into what you call a third world status because they no longer have an African country to mooch off of. They go to other places to go and mooch off and plant bases. You see, this is the problem with white people. This is what I have a problem with white people with. Is that they can't get out of the mud. But they tell everybody else to get out of the mud. They can't survive on their own. But they want everybody else. And they blame everybody else, that everybody else isn't surviving on their own. They talk about immigration. They want people to leave their countries. Why don't you leave people's country alone? How about you practice what you preach? If you don't want people in your country, get the hell out of their country. I mean, is it not it's not very simple? If you don't want people in your country, right? This is white people I'm talking about right now. If you don't want people in your country, why don't you get the hell out of their country? What is France doing in Africa? What is the United States doing in Africa? What is Britain doing in Africa in terms of their military bases, their forces, their companies? No, they go there and they steal in from those places so they can enrich their countries. And then their countries are fat and enriched. Now they tell those citizens, they have the audacity to those citizens from those countries that they steal in from, you can't come to our country. But we get to go to your country and steal from you because we are superior. Because we are gods on earth. Because we are your masters. Because you guys need us. This is the stuff they tell themselves in their heads. And now you're finding Africans waking up. And they're saying, you know what? These people, the presence of these people in these countries, in our countries, is causing the problems that we have. Our day-to-day problem is as a result of these people. Our day-to-day I was just in Africa. I went to Ghana, and I'm going to talk to you guys about my trip to Ghana. When I was in Ghana, I was telling them in Ghana, right, that your problem in this country is not so much as your bad leaders. Those bad leaders are planted there. They're the face you see, and so they're the ones you blame. But they are put there by these same white folks that you're trying to go to their country. They're strong-armed, and they're told, listen, if you don't do and bend over so we can rape you from behind, we're going to make sure that we bankrupt your countries. You see, those are the faces that Africans see. When they see their presidents and their leaders making bad decisions, that is the face you see. You don't see the real devil behind that whole face. Look at what they did to Venezuela. Because Venezuela says no. Look at how they bankrupt that country. Now they are all mad that Venezuelans are coming to their country. Look at what they did to Cuba. Look at what they did to Gaddafi's country, Libya. Because those ones dare to say no. That's how they bankrupt countries. Because countries decide, no, come on, man. We need to do fair trade here. Can we do fair trade here? Right? You want our minerals? That's fine. We want to sell it to you. No big deal. We're going to sell it on the fair trade, fair market trade. What is wrong with that? Please tell me what is wrong with that. You want my minerals. I want to sell it to you. You are a buyer. I am a seller. Let us sell this at fair market value. No, they don't want that. They want to buy it at pennies on the dollar. That's the only way capitalism works in this country, by the way. You buy it cheap and sell it high. That's how capitalism works. It doesn't work based on fair value. It doesn't work based on fair dealing. It works based on exploitation. Capitalism, if you don't know what that is, right? The only reason capitalism works is based on exploitation. I have to exploit you, right? In order for me to get the profit. That profit margin that a lot of these companies boast of, right, is based on exploitation. I would love to explain that whole thing to you all, but this is not the video for that. This is not a video for that. It's based on exploitation. And these countries who are practicing this exploitation go to other countries and demonize all their systems and tell them that the systems are horrible. Demonize all their own democratic system. Your system is horrible. You got to practice exploitation because that's what we're bringing to your countries. So that exploitation is what's caused the French people, France, to set their bases all over the once colonized regions so they can keep exploiting from them so they can grow their economy as they've done over the years. The same exploitation system that the United States practices to put its base all over the place. Same thing with the other one, England. Y'all know how I feel about that country. The worst of all of them. And now Africa is waking up. And so you got to get the hell out of our countries. Gabon got to follow suit. Djibouti got to follow suit. You got to get these guys out of your countries. The problem of Africa today is because of Western influence and European influence. That is the problem. Africa's problem are these two regions who are determined to make sure that black people do not succeed, who are determined to live off of black people, on the backs of black people, and then have the audacity to tell black people, you are nothing. You got to get out of our country. You got to go to your country. No, I don't think so. For every country, let me say it again, because I've said it many times in my video, for every country that these countries have exploited, every one of those citizens, I pray you all flood those countries. Flood them from here onwards to the end of time. Flood it. Every one of those countries, whether it's Nigeria, whether it's Ghana, whether it's Ivory Coast, whether it's Mali, whether it's Niger, every one of those citizens, make sure you find your way to these countries and flood their countries. Because payback is a bitch. They don't get to go to your country, right? Infiltrate your people, steal your people's minerals and their resources, loot it, impoverish your country, go back to their country and live fancy, and then tell you that you don't get to come to their country. I don't think so. Flood it. That's right. Flood it. And don't worry about whatever they tell you in terms of, no, if they don't like it, they need to stay in their own country. See, France already is about to slide into a third world status. They're already in problems because Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali kicked them out. So they have no access to those mineral resources anymore. They keep going all over the place. Yeah, that is a proof that they can't survive without Africa. So now they've lost the other ones. This, to me, I tell you, is a great news starting the new year. This is a great news. Because it's about goddamn time that Africa begins to channel its ancestral rights and spirit and stand up to these bullies and say, get the hell out. Because you know when they're in those countries, you know what they're doing. They're not helping those countries. They're gathering intelligence against those countries. They're gathering intelligence. When they are posted out in those countries, they're gathering the intelligence. That's what they've been doing there. They've not. That's why they haven't solved the so-called insurgencies. They've fueled it. They've paid for it. They funded it. When they're in the outskirts of those countries, in their bases, they're using their drones to find the weaknesses in those countries, the vulnerabilities in those countries. That way, when you have a leader in those countries, right, who stands up and say, hey, you can't take our stuff, and they want to nationalize their minerals. This is how they work with the CIA and the intelligence in their country to depose those people and to assassinate them. It is all for their own benefit. And so the jig is up. They need to do the same thing with the U.S. forces over there. Because the way I see it is that if U.S. wants to plant a base in Africa, then it has to be a mutual exchange. Those African countries need to plant a base in the United States. That's the way I see it. I don't know if is that how you see it? Am I crazy? Am I crazy to think like that? You let me know. Put it in the comment section. If the United States, France, or Britain wants to put a base, right, in Africa, then African countries, those same African countries, should be allowed to plant a base in the United States. That should be the conversation. But they won't go for that. They won't go for that. It's a one-sided thing here. So thank you, Africa. Thank you, Ivory Coast, for standing up to the bully. Thank you, Senegal. Your eyes finally open for standing up to the bullies. And I hope that the other ones follow suit and kick their asses out of their countries. It's time to go back to their country. Go mind your own country. Mind your own country and mind your own people. You've got a lot of terrorism in your country. Homegrown terrorism in your own country. Look at what just happened in the United States. Huh? Was that the work of any outside influence? Look at what just happened in the United States on the 1st of this year. Their own citizen ran a car through in what's the place? New Orleans. Their own citizen ran a car through in New Orleans. Look what happened at the Trump Tower in Las Vegas. Their own citizen, who was a part and an active member of the armed forces, set the place on fire. They got to go deal with their own issues. Right? They got to go deal with their own issues and stop worrying about what's going on in Africa. Go fix your own issues. Fix your own issues and stay in your own region. Don't worry about planting bases in Africa. Africa is good. And I hope that Africans will continue to wake up, understand where its power lies in, and stop giving these once colonial dictators a footprint in your country. And I pray that we keep seeing more of this from Africa. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Please like the video, share the content, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all next time.
Nu vill jag kunna ge tillbaka allt jag inte kunnat ge förut. Det finns ingen annan där som kan stå här by my side, oh why. Sättet du rör på det får mig att dö för det, baby. För de här yardis, de vill ju bara dra ner oss. Men du är fett och vanlig. Och det jag lägger all min tid, jag vill ha det. Du får mig känna safety.